Once a guy named Nasa had a chat with his teacher about his future. Later, he headed back home, and his name is a bit funny because it's NASA, like the space agency. On a snowy day, he had a lot on his mind when he came across a cute girl across the street. NASA really liked this girl, and he thought that talking to her was the most important thing in his life, so he crossed the road to talk to her. But halfway across, a truck came rushing toward him and hit him hard. He blacked out, but later woke up and saw the girl covered in blood next to him. She had shielded him from the truck and told the driver to take NASA to the hospital while ignoring her own injuries. NASA tried to thank her, but she told him to forget about her and disappeared into the night, leaving him puzzled. He thought she looked like Kaguya from a story, returning to the moon, and then he passed out again. When NASA woke up, he asked the driver where the girl went, but the driver told him not to move because he was hurt. However, NASA couldn't waste any time and needed to find that girl, so he ran off into a snowy blizzard despite his injuries. Eventually, he found her at a bus stop. She told him to sit down and even gave him her coat. Seeing NASA's condition worsened, she went to get help, but NASA didn't want to miss the chance to talk to her. He told her he thought she was like Kaguya, and he wished the Emperor and an old man in the story had tried harder to stop her from leaving. Finally, he gathered the courage to confess his feelings and asked her out. After a pause, she agreed to go out with him if he married her. NASA happily agreed and then fainted again. He woke up in a hospital and started recovering and studying. Instead of going to high school, he focused on jobs where he served customers, hoping to meet the girl again. But days turned into lonely months in the small apartment. 2 years later, the mysterious girl showed up at his place, shocking NASA. She introduced herself as Tsukasa. They sat down, and she brought out a marriage form, surprising NASA once more. She reminded him of their agreement from the day they met, and NASA, determined and smitten, filled out the form without hesitation. Afterward, Tsukasa looked at the form and thought her new name, Yuzaki Tsukasa, sounded nice. Even though it was nighttime, they headed to the marriage office to make it official. As they walked, Tsukasa asked NASA how he felt about her name, and he realized she had never teased him about his own name. She called his name beautiful, making him realize the surreal nature of their marriage but his genuine desire to be with her. They finalized their marriage and got a commemorative plant. Tsukasa suggested they hold hands since they were now married, and NASA got flustered, thinking about touching more than just hands, which Tsukasa overheard. NASA sat alone in his apartment trying to wrap his head around the fact that he and Tsukasa were now married. He suddenly realized that they might have to share a bed, and that made him really nervous. In his desperation, NASA started thinking of ways they could both sleep comfortably in one bed. But then Tsukasa returned home, and to his surprise and embarrassment, she found him hugging a pillow, lost in thoughts of being with her. After the awkward moment passed, he asked her what she had been up to, and she mentioned retrieving her luggage from a coin locker. NASA wondered if her family would be worried about her being out so late. However, Tsukasa revealed that she didn't have a home anymore. Hearing this, NASA decided that one futon would suffice and he could sleep on the floor, but Tsukasa suggested she stay at a hotel for the night. At first, NASA didn't like the idea, but Tsukasa assured him that since she was his wife, she wasn't planning to go anywhere. This surprised NASA greatly. He couldn't help but wonder why she had married him in the first place, so he asked her. However, she kept it a secret, much to his annoyance. As bedtime approached, Tsukasa proposed staying at a hotel again, but NASA didn't like the idea until she reassured him that, as his wife, she wouldn't leave. This took him by surprise once more. Marriage usually comes with its share of problems, but their first issue as a married couple arose when they realized they had only one futon. Sleeping together was too embarrassing to consider. NASA suggested buying a second futon, and Tsukasa agreed as long as it was a memory foam one. They went shopping for the futon, and Tsukasa asked if this would be NASA's first present to her, to which he gladly replied yes. Back home, NASA found himself pondering the meaning of marriage. To him, it now meant that a girl was on the other side of a thin door, changing into her pajamas. This thought made him quite anxious. It was time to go to sleep, but he couldn't rest properly, being so distracted by Tsukasa. As he watched her toss and turn in her sleep, NASA briefly considered giving her a goodnight kiss, but decided against it, wanting their first kiss to be special. However, Tsukasa suddenly got up to get a drink, and when she returned to her futon, she fell asleep on his bed, pulling the covers off as she slid down to the floor. Long story short, NASA couldn't sleep with his wife so close. The next morning, NASA woke up first and couldn't help but see Tsukasa undressing in front of him. He realized that things had changed a lot since the day before, and now there was a certain someone in the same room. Just as she began to take off her pajama shirt, and NASA's eyes wandered where they shouldn't. The scene was censored, and Kenjiro Heda, the author, regained control of the story, and NASA stopped her. In the early morning, Tsukasa got up, got dressed, and decided to make breakfast for herself and NASA. When she opened NASA's fridge, she was surprised to see how much food he had, all neatly labeled and organized. Nasa explained that he had studied dietetics and figured that having hot pot every day was the best meal for him. Tsukasa wasn't too impressed with this idea and told him to wait while she prepared something better. After about 10 minutes, they sat down to eat, and Nasa was completely amazed by the delicious food she had prepared. After finishing their meal, they decided to go to the nearest bathhouse since Nasa's apartment didn't have a bath. Nasa knew the owners well, and he was eager to see Tsukasa after her bath. They arrived at the Arisugawa bathhouse, which had two quirky sisters running it. The first sister, Kanami Arisugawa, was already at work when they arrived. She was shocked to see Nasa with a girl, thinking that he had studied so much that he had no interest in girls. Nasa tried to defend himself, but then Kanami noticed something interesting: the word queer associated with her on a sign. This meant she liked dirty jokes and wasn't a delicate young girl, as it turned out. Kanami asked if they were dating, but Nasa surprised her by revealing that they were actually married. After congratulating them, albeit a bit unsure, Kanami invited Tsukasa in to take a bath. However, when Nasa tried to enter as well, Kanami stopped him and demanded an explanation for this surprising turn of events. In her mind, Nasa was the last person she expected to get a girlfriend, and she even had wild dreams of him thinking he was a wizard in his 30s. Kanami also asked if he had told her sister, Aya, about it, but Nasa hadn't. Kanami assured him that she wouldn't spill the beans to Aya and inquired about their wedding ceremony and rings. Nasa admitted he hadn't thought about those details yet. Kanami reminded him that since he had decided to marry Tsukasa, he had a duty to make her happy. Filled with determination, Nasa declared his love for his wife and promised to make her happy. However, Tsukasa, who had just returned to gather her things, overheard him and became embarrassed. She took her belongings, and while she was embarrassed by his declaration in front of others, she admitted it also made her very happy. Inside the bathhouse, Nasa's mind was preoccupied with the idea of seeing his wife naked. He tried to act normal, thinking a naked wife would appear before him, but instead he was joined by Kanami Arisugawa, who seemed to enjoy teasing him. She teased him so much that he left the bath exhausted and without any energy. Meanwhile, Tsukasa was enjoying her bath until Aya Arisugawa, the older sister and a bit of a klutz, joined her. Aya apologized for accidentally watching Tsukasa while she was bathing and offered to help by wiping her back. After some hesitation, Tsukasa accepted. Aya commented on how beautiful Tsukasa's skin was, comparing it to silk. However, she quickly realized that silk came from silkworms, and comparing her skin to insect excrement wasn't quite right. Instead, she decided to compare it to an iPhone X for reasons known only to her. She was a bit clumsy. Aya introduced herself as the eldest daughter of the bathhouse and assumed that Tsukasa was Nasa's little sister due to the earlier misunderstanding. She was quite a klutz. After Nasa finished his bath and met up with Tsukasa, they were accompanied by Aya. Aya didn't realize that Nasa and Tsukasa were married, and they were unaware of this too. Aya shared her gratitude for Nasa helping the Arisugawa family during difficult times. Tsukasa seemed disappointed at hearing how thankful Aya was to Nasa, but Nasa didn't catch on. They left the bathhouse and headed home, with Tsukasa mentioning how cute Aya seemed. Nasa agreed, not realizing the potential misunderstanding. As he noticed Tsukasa looking at a church wedding, he remembered what Kanami had told him about their marriage. He asked Tsukasa if she was worried about that thing, the ceremony or rings, but she misunderstood and thought he was referring to Aya. Tsukasa wanted Nasa to tell her that she was cute too, but he didn't quite understand, leading to a bit of confusion. Nasa then left to check something, asking Tsukasa to go back home and wait for him. It was at this moment that a new character, Chidose Kajinoji, made her appearance. Tsukasa, waiting for Nasa to return, decided to clean the place. However, she was surprised to find that her capable husband had already cleaned everything she could see. She didn't want to risk discovering any secret things he might have hidden away, so she decided not to investigate further and thought of another way to surprise Nasa when he returned: cooking. As she was preparing in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Tsukasa assumed it was Nasa and rushed to answer the door. However, to her surprise, it wasn't Nasa, but a young girl named Chidose Kajinoji. Chidose referred to Tsukasa as her sister, but it was more of a term of affection than a blood relation. She commented that the apartment Tsukasa was staying in wasn't suitable for her. Tsukasa quickly shut the door in Chidose's face, but the girl started crying. Feeling sorry for her, Tsukasa opened the door again. Chidose explained that their grandaunt Takiko Tsukiyomi was worried about Tsukasa and had told her where Tsukasa was staying. Chidose had come without Takiko's permission because she cared deeply for her Nisama, Tsukasa. However, Tsukasa couldn't see the reason for Takiko's concern and told Chidose that she was now married. Impressed by Nasa's determination, Chidose decided to share what had happened without mentioning Tsukasa's name. She described a person she had problems with, comparing her to a delicate glass butterfly that flew at night trying to reach the moon. This person was easily hurt, fragile, and disappeared if not kept in sight, but Chitosai cared a lot about her. Just when Chitosai was starting to appreciate Nasa's willingness to listen to a troubled middle school girl, Tsukasa, who had been eavesdropping, exclaimed loudly, "Oh dear." Chitosai quickly realized that Nasa was Tsukasa's husband. Tsukasa introduced Nasa to Chitosai, and he initiated a conversation despite Chitosai's protests. Chitosai was adamant that she wouldn't accept him as Tsukasa's partner in marriage. However, Nasa calmly acknowledged that her concerns were valid due to the suddenness of it all. Chitosai refused to accept this and did something quite unexpected. She kidnapped Nasa. With a snap of her fingers, she summoned a limousine that whisked Nasa away to Chitosai's villa. Although Chitosai was classy and not into torture, she was determined to find a way to wreck Nasa's marriage with Tsukasa. She enlisted the help of her maids, Aurora and Charlotte, with the plan to create a scandal. However, things quickly went awry when Charlotte took her task a bit too seriously. Chitosai lost confidence in her plan and wasted time lecturing Charlotte about being more cautious with lewd matters. Meanwhile, Nasa managed to escape and explored the mansion. As he searched for Tsukasa's room, he suddenly detected her scent and followed it. He came across a room with a glass case containing a moonstone, and his surprise grew. Charlotte appeared with a large sword, determined to prevent him from entering. She attacked him, but Chitosai and Aurora arrived, scolding Charlotte for being reckless in that room. Unfortunately, Charlotte damaged the case containing the moonstone. Quickly, Nasa managed to repair it, preserving the moonstone. Chitosai realized that the moonstone was indeed real and asked if Nasa knew about Tsukasa's past. Nasa admitted he didn't know, which infuriated Chitosai. She couldn't believe that Tsukasa had married someone who knew nothing about her. Charlotte intervened, thanking Nasa for saving Tsukasa's moonstone and hugging him. However, Aurora took the opportunity to snap a picture of them and edited it to make it look indecent. Tsukasa arrived just then, saw the edited picture, and commented on how nice it looked, leaving Nasa shocked. Chitosai told Nasa to get a divorce because she thought he was terrible. Tsukasa seemed to agree and asked Nasa to follow her so they could talk it over. However, once they left the room, it became clear that Tsukasa had pretended to be angry so they could escape from Chitosai. They found themselves in an old church built in the Meiji era. Seeing Tsukasa so bright and happy made Nasa realize what devotion truly meant. He began to express his feelings, promising that he would always share both the good and the bad with her. He didn't want her to ever regret choosing him as her husband. In what seemed like a proposal, he sealed it with a kiss, vowing his eternal love for her. But the story is not finished yet. Comment down below for a part 2. Thanks for watching.